Hello again, and thanks very much for joining our webinar today entitled AI Solutions to Close the Risk Confidence Gap in Financial and Government Organizations. My name is Rebecca, and I'm with Babel Street. A couple of housekeeping items. We are recording the webinar, and the webinar recording will be available and sent to every registrant shortly after the program today. All attendees are on mute, but if you have questions for our presenters, please type them into the questions panel in the GoToWebinar console, and we'll do our best to answer them after the presentation and discussion. At this time, I'd like to introduce Todd McCormick, the Chief Revenue Officer of Vital4. Todd is a seasoned CRO with over 20 years of experience as a sales leader, scaling high-growth technology companies, both domestically and internationally. He oversees Vital4's expansion efforts, which include new customer acquisition, partnerships, marketing, and international. Todd, over to you.
Great. Well, thank you, and welcome everybody. Really excited to be be engaging with you today, and we have some just really seasoned experts to really share some great knowledge with you today. So with that, I'd like to start by turning it over to Pat Deeb, and we'll let you introduce yourself, Pat.
Thanks, Todd. It's good to see you. My name is Pat Deeb. I head up the sales engineering group at Babel Street. Prior to my tenure at Babel Street, I was actually a customer of Babel Street when I was back in the day at Vital4, a colleague of these two gentlemen to each side of me here. So I go way back with these guys. I'm really happy to be here.
Well, great. And Kellen, I'll turn it over to you to introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Kellen Williams. I'm the Chief Data Scientist at Vital4. Been I know both these gentlemen for a long time, but prior to working with them, I've just spent the past 11 years in the machine learning and AI space, really helping apply these capabilities to solve different business problems. And that's really what we're focused at Vital4, is creating unique solutions using AI and machine learning.
Well, great. Well, guys, let's dive right in. I think everyone's excited to, to hear from both of you. You guys are building some amazing solutions, have built some amazing solutions. And it's interesting today, it's just, AI has been a buzz for some time, and I think it's becoming a little bit more real, from a financial services perspective and in some other areas. But I think some of it is demystifying, AI, and I think, more people are familiar with generative versus predictive. And so, I think we really want to focus on, AI that's really making an impact in the spaces that we're servicing today. So, with that, why don't I turn it over to you guys and really describe AI, different types, and, let's just jump right in and educate the audience first before we get into some examples.
Yeah, sure. That sounds good, Todd. I appreciate that. So, as you can see on the slide, we're kind of talking about there are several different subsets of AI, but two of the biggest ones that we're really dealing with today is going to be generative AI and predictive AI. Now, everybody has heard of all the buzz of the chat GPTs and OpenAI. And really today, as you hear about AI in the news, a lot of the buzz is really around generative AI. So what is that? Generative AI is more about giving a machine something that you call prompt, and then the machine taking that prompt and generating information from it. So it has a really large creative context, and that creative context can be to help you expand on an idea, to help you write a document, an email, to help generate code for development. And it's really about taking something and feeding into what is called a large language model and having something generated back to you. And again, with very much a creative type of aspect to it. At a really high level, what's underneath the hood, like I said, is what is called a large language model. And what these large language models are these huge word vector embeddings. And the way that it works, again, at a very high level, is when you feed this question and you feed this prompt that's going to ask it to generate something for you, it's taking that in, it's tokenizing it, And then basically one word or one phrase at a time, it's building a generated response for you. But what's happening is it adds a word or a phrase to the end of what you've asked it, feeds it back into the large language model, takes another word or phrase, adds that to the end of it, so on and so on and so forth. And the point of me telling you that is it is very, very compute intensive. So these days you hear a lot about GPUs and why GPUs have to be used to run these large language models. Again, driving the point home that it's not quite scalable yet. The scalability of it is still something that has to be solved. It's very compute intensive, it's very power intensive, but it's very, very good for creation and generation. Now go over to predictive AI. So predictive AI is a little bit more along the lines of the things that Kellen and I deal with every day. Predictive AI is taking all kinds of, for example, pieces of unstructured data, the massive amounts of data that are generated every day. And there are 3.2 trillion terabytes of data being generated every single day now. So it would be absolutely impossible for a human or humans to parse through all this data to pull out the important parts. That's where predictive AI comes in. Predictive AI can, as opposed to being fed prompts, is fed lots and lots of unstructured data. And then you are given on the other side either analytics, extractions from that data that are meaningful or pertinent to you as far as what your use case is, and then can predict what an outcome may be based on the information that you're giving it. Not nearly as compute intensive as LLMs are, so very scalable these days. We'll get into some of the examples when we get into the next slide, but those are the main differences between predictive AI and generative AI. And Kellen, I know you have quite a bit of experience with the predictive AI, so I'm sure you have some comments on this as well.
Sure, yeah, so that's great foundation there. So yeah, generative AI, as Pat said, has been a buzz the past year, about a year and a half since ChatGPT came online. A lot of it is creating content. It's content creation, whether it be with visuals, creative elements, or writing a letter for you. Predictive AI really has more practical use for any business, whether it be using unstructured data to break down what an article says and extract specific elements, or trying to predict or forecast outcomes, trying to predict customer retention, predict churn, predict fraud. So these types of predictive models can either be supervised or unsupervised. And supervised models really are about giving a statistical model an example of what you're trying to predict. So if it's fraud, saying this is what fraud looks like. Now we're going to train the model and we're going to now be able to predict fraud. So that's predictive. That's a machine learning capability with supervised modeling. Unsupervised modeling is looking for anomalies. It can be behavioral, it can be finding the needle in the haystack and creating segments and understanding how to mine the data in a different way. So you can see that there's totally different use cases. There's so many different use cases, but machine learning is the basis of both generative and predictive AI, which is really about training a machine to think or to be able to change the process versus most rules in history have been rules-based. A lot of models that financial institutions are using today are still rules-based, especially fraud and risk models, where they're reliant on reacting to some new fraud that comes out or reacting to risk by creating a new rule. Whereas machine learning models, as they see changes in the data and changes in the inputs, they're able to retrain themselves and create that new understanding of what's changing. So you can see that there's a lot of benefits to using AI. Some of it has to do with efficiencies, and then some of it has to do with, in my opinion, is augmenting people to make better decisions. And that's what I think both Babel Street and Vital 4 were really focused on, delivering insights so that the human can make the ultimate better decision.
You know, it's interesting you bring in the human factor. I mean, it's like, I think it's Forbes said like 53% of businesses are adopting AI, right? That's general, to improve processes, you know, and then you move downstream from that and they think that, you know, AI is going to solve without humans. Some of it is human trained, some of it is post, the automation happening and improving, that efficiency. I mean, which do you see having a larger impact on, I mean, I think in the workforce in general, but I think more specifically in the realm that, that we're in today?
So of the two different types of AIs that we're looking at, is that your question, Todd?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, they absolutely both are going to have a massive impact, and it depends on your use case. But as far as the types of problems and things and solutions that Vital 4 and Babel Street are coming up with and bringing to use cases and bringing to our customers, absolutely predictive AI is where our specialties lie. And again, with generative AI, it's really it's not only, but it's very much about a creative type of aspect. And sure, you can use generative AI to summarize things and to ask questions about certain documents, but predictive AI, especially in the context of how Kellen explained it, is really where the use cases that we're going to kind of hit on the next slide, it really comes into play and is really the type of AI that's going to be solving these kinds of problems.
Great. Anything else to add, Kellen? Or
yeah, so the more I think about it, because I have the same opinion as Pat. Predictive AI is way more usable for the average business as far as to make decisions for strategy, for actually impacting the business. However, there's a potential, which I think is the long term, is putting generative on top of the predictive output. So if you can give people a tool that uses generative to query data, to ask a question about the data, and then it's pulling it back from a predictive model, that's where I see like the ultimate kind of mixture between the two, where you're able to ask questions of a data set that's generated from a machine learning or predictive model, and it gives it to you in natural language. So I think that's a layering effect that will probably happen in the future, and would provide probably the best benefits across the spectrum.
yeah, I like that perspective, right? I mean, the combination can be, really powerful, over time, and so that's great. I think moving into, what's been interesting is I think the regulators have been talking about the use of AI and demystifying it themselves, which applications to look at, and yeah, I think it really through the conferences that I've attended this year, whether it's ACAMS or Marketplace Risk, where everyone's talking about real world outcomes, from AI, applications. Regulators are pushing organizations to try new technology because the old technology isn't solving the problem, and in some cases the problem is just multiplying. And so talk about where you're seeing it specifically applied, compliance and the sectors that that we're all familiar with, and unlock some of the use cases that get you guys excited, and why you guys continue to develop in this space.
Yeah, absolutely. So, to the compliance point that you're making, Todd, what I'm really happy about is starting to see a lot more of prospects and customers and companies out there being proactive about this. For a while, especially prospects that came to us, unfortunately, they're coming to us in a reactive state. They had already been fined for something. They had already had some sort of weakness identified in their processes that was allowing, for example, bad actors to succeed in the types of actions that they were trying to take. So seeing a lot more proactivity in the folks that are coming to us, which is fantastic, because they're really realizing the benefits that AI is bringing, both as far as being able to reduce human hours. And the reduction of human hours, by the way, for anyone who is in that kind of AI replacing humans, it's not the reduction of human hours to where that human's no longer needed at the company. It's the reduction of human hours to reallocate those human resources to something else, to something more important, and let the machines do what the machines can do. So, proactive approach that customers are taking. So biggest thing that we see over at Babel Street is going to be things basically around AML, KYC, right? Anti-money laundering and know your customer. It's really, really important to be able to understand who your customer is and the kind of transactions that they're making and the kind of business that they're doing when it comes to a financial aspect. It's a very hard problem to solve when there are billions and billions of these transactions happening every second, and when you have new customer onboarding happening at a very exponentially higher rate than in just a few years ago. You have to understand who those folks are, and you have to move fast in doing so. And you have to be quick in predicting from a financial transaction aspect, what is something that needs to be flagged or what is something that is legitimate. We want to believe that everything is legitimate, but the bad actors are out there and they're always trying to get around it. AI is here to help us with that. So AML KYC is huge, and what we see a lot over at Battle Street with AML KYC is a huge challenge, especially with onboarding and knowing your customer and knowing your business, and being able to take the names of those people or those businesses, and when you're running those names against in some sort of search engine against, for example, say watch lists or any type of other bad actor list or something that you need to see if they are on in order to know that you don't want to do business with them. The problem is those names are never an exact match between any two systems. So you have to have the ability to do something like a fuzzy name match, which is something that is a sect of NLP, natural language processing, which is a type of AI. And fuzzy name matching comes with its own very strict sets of nuances that can't be really met with just fuzzy string matching. So that enables AML KYC to happen at a much higher rate, and the ability for us to identify people that may not be an exact match. Same thing with border protection, right? So with border protection, protecting our borders from folks coming into the country, the name on their passport may be slightly different than a name on a watch list, especially if it's in a different language or a different script, and you need to transliterate that, and there may be small differences, and you still want to be able to find them on that list. So huge use case there. Then you also have things like Customer 360, which is just about, Customer 360 is kind of a term that we have that's about our customers being able to take several large databases that are probably going to have different types of records for different customers in those databases, and being able to bring them together to aggregate them to come up with a master database. And you have to have almost like a data deduping type of technology to do that, which is part of that. And then finally, to talk kind of more on the unstructured side of things, big use case is going to be in the legal side, in investigations. So many legal documents, as you guys can imagine, legal cases can come with just piles and piles of documents that need to be parsed. And predictive AI, especially things like entity extraction, topic extraction, you can very quickly parse all those documents and bring out what are the most pertinent pieces of information to give you the analysis that you need, so that you don't need humans going through all of those documents at all times. So it's not an all-inclusive list, but those are some of the big ones that we see. So Kellen, I'm sure you've seen some other applications as well.
Yeah, I mean, so with Vital 4, a lot of what we're doing with it involves identity screening, processing a lot of news articles to be able to extract artifacts about people in the articles, to do AML and KYC different capabilities and products. So we're along the same spectrum there, using unstructured data, using NLP to predict outcomes and be able to provide context to what these massive amounts of articles or data sets are saying. And that's really kind of goes back to what Pat was saying about giving, it's not about replacing people, but by some of these things just simply a human couldn't do. You couldn't have humans reading through millions of articles. It would take months and years to do the same thing that we can create technology and deliver solutions. They can do it in hours. So by being able to provide additional context that a human doesn't normally have, makes so you can make better decisions, you can make quicker decisions with more context around that entity. And then, you know, some of these other things on here, national security, fraud, there's just so much that needs to be done for human trafficking, for different types of fraud, kiting, check fraud. these are things that traditional methodologies just don't work anymore. And unfortunately, most institutions are still on rules-based models because a lot of financial institutions are slow moving with the risk profile. So I think a lot of the last 5 to 10 years has been around education for institutions on what's possible, why using AI and machine learning is actually reducing risk in a large way. For me, it's about having a methodology that's consistent versus if you put too much on the human element for analysis, every single person is going to be different. So Pat, Todd, and I, if we were looking at a potential fraud case, we would all look at it in a different lens versus if you have a repeatable technology and that learns as it's fed more data, you end up with a consistent methodology that's not going to have the error rate that humans do. So there's so many different use cases, but I think the main story is that we're still at the early adoption of AI in the financial and compliance space. There's so much coming down the pipeline, and I think as regulators realize the power and those use cases get brought forward from companies like Babel Street and Vital4 as they're producing new tools, those new capabilities will become regulation, is what I'm expecting. So, you know, and all with the goal of reducing risk for the consumer, making things better for everybody. So I think there's so much, and we're just basically at the early part of the curve.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, go ahead, Pat.
Sorry, Todd. I just wanted to just tag off of one more thing off of what Kellen said, just because since I didn't specifically speak to necessarily a government sector use case, just as a tail end to what I had said, as you can imagine, intelligence data in the government sector is massive. It's not necessarily something that is going to be able to be kept up with by humans. So that's a perfect example of a government sector use case. Intelligence data is to uncover threats. The predictive AI is going to help understand through all that intelligence data that's coming in what is the most pertinent in giving you the analytics that you need to be able to understand the pieces of information that you really need to pay attention to.
Yeah, and I think it's, you know, what's really exciting for us to see is the outcomes already downstream, you know, and you look at all the initiatives around human trafficking and the number of data elements that it takes to really identify, you know, rings. And so you take that use case, and I love what I'm seeing around fraud and AML and bringing more data from both of those historically siloed, you know, departments within an organization, you know, but you need the technology to bring this stuff together and make some of those predictions, you know, to get the analysts to an outcome faster. You know, the increased efficiencies, like to your point, it's not excluding, you know, individuals. It's now they don't have to go through, you know, 100 pieces of content to make a decision. Now it's 5, right? Or, you know, so it's that reduction of noise and reduction of that mundane sort of work, and it's providing more value to the individual in that organization because they're really focused on what they should be focused on. You know, so yeah, it's exciting to see, not in theory, you know, now we're seeing in application and, you know, outcomes from it. You know, but I think there's still some, you know, just a little bit of angst out there. You know, it's like everyone, you know, that we see, it says, you know, we're doing AI, right? Like, you know, we've got AI as part of our application, you know, and it's just, it's become the standard kind of architecture around a software company now, right? Which makes it difficult for, you know, the consumers, right? And I think, you know, to shift over, it's like, okay, now how do we choose an AI solution, right? As a combination of, right? Like, you know, and so where do we even start, right? Because it's really hard. I mean, even we talked about today, I'm learning, right? You know, and so the buyer is going to be, you know, a little bit behind, you know, the provider. So, you know, really talk to me about, you know, your thoughts on finding the right solution, you know, for an organization.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, that's a great point. I mean, first and foremost, finding the right partner is of paramount importance, and finding a trusted partner and finding a partner that has experience in this. And, you know, both for partners I know like Babel Street and for Vital4, it's not just about the AI products that we offer. It's really helping, like you said, Todd, these folks who are kind of scratching their heads going, where do I start? It's helping them understand that. Even if it's not necessarily our products that are going to help solve their problem, it's helping them understand where they're headed with AI, where their business and their process flows are headed, how it can help them. And further, for those that have kind of tried to take it on themselves, and in other words, in the kind of build versus buy type of scenario and decision-making process where they start with build before they go to buy, we can really help them understand all the challenges of that and how companies like yours and ours have that experience under their belt and the ability to come over as a partner, not just as a vendor, to help them through that, to really show them that their time is really better spent partnering up with us than trying to just build this thing from scratch, because we've done it. We've had the years of experience, the R&D, the support. So as far as some of the points that are made on this slide, understanding the business requirements, that is first and foremost of the most utmost importance. And sometimes when prospects come to us, they only kind of understand their business requirements, and we have to help them understand it. But of course, it's always going to start with them. And that information is something that is extremely important for us to be able to help them. But as long as they know I have a problem and this is the problem that needs to be solved, we can take it from there and we can help. From there, we say, okay, these are the types of AI options that there are available to help solve your problem. We explain it to them. And again, not in necessarily a this is our product way. We educate them on AI in general. And then we say, if any of those things sound like something that is attractive to you and something that would help solve your problem, here's what we have, and here's how we can help you with it, and here's how we can partner with you on it, including not just the product itself, but our expertise in AI to help you develop it and to help you build it out. And so I already spoke to the internal, and this is an external build, but the rollout and the implementation, this is where a lot of folks can be a little fearful. They say, okay, so we found a product, we found a good partner. We don't even know if we have the ability or team or resources to be able to build this thing out. And again, with our expertise, we're able to help that. And probably the next most important thing to business requirements is ROI. We are able to help you understand, if you don't even know yourself what it is that you're looking for, what your ROI is going to be by engaging the proper type of AI into your process. We can help you define that. And that helps you understand what is happening, how your processes are improved, and how you're able then to communicate to your stakeholders the benefits that are received, the benefits that are understood for the process that you've taken on. So,
well, and at that point, it won't take, it doesn't take 6 months, right, to start to see the ROI, right?
Oh, right. No, absolutely.
I think that's been some of the, some organizations invest in technology and they don't see that, value for, 12, 24 months,
Right.
And so, it's almost instantly in some cases they can see some sort of, improvement because of the tech. And I love what I think where you're going in regards to like your engagement, right? It's not around, AI in any of our organizations. In some cases, just helping them understand like what, and hey, try this technology over here, right, is great alongside the things that we're doing. And it's evangelizing, the things that are working, holistically, as part of that process. So that's good to hear, Pat. Kellen, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, along the same lines, I feel like if somebody wants to use AI just so that they can say they're using AI, that can become a problem. They can stub their toes a lot of times because they might end up with a bunch of disparate tools and capabilities that don't really end up working in the real world for them. So I think it's important to have a trusted partner, have somebody that's been doing it, not just the past year, but has experience doing it for a long time, so that you have the right point of view. And a lot of this is about education. So it is about identifying a specific business requirement or specific use case that you can't solve today, and then working to understand what is the future state. What can we do if we drive innovation using AI for this business problem? And then it's identifying what the best solution is. And the best solution should be able to tell you how to leverage it, how it's going to fit into your business strategy, how it's going to deliver more insights. how it's going to help with your efficiency. And like Pat said, if you can't come up with an ROI or an end outcome, then it's probably not going to be met with much success all the way up to the board level. So I think the goal is education. It's know before you jump into something. And because what I've seen over the past 10, 12 years is companies say, hey, we're going to go hire a bunch of data scientists. We're going to stand up a group to build some capability. And then they quickly find out that unless those individuals they hire have done it before, well, you could have just sunk millions of dollars into a fun project. And then what happens with a lot of organizations is they say, well, AI doesn't work for our organization, or we can't trust it. So you want to do it the right way, which is starting small, start with a specific implementation, and then scale it. And I think by doing that, you get the wins, you get the understanding of in the business of how it works, why it works, the benefits of using it, and then you get better adoption and scale. So I think we're going to continue to see more people talking about the different capabilities. Businesses every day, like Vital4, Battle Street, we're coming up with new capabilities, new products to deliver. So just staying at pace with what's possible, I think, is important.
Well, this has been great. I think we're coming up at the half hour here, and would love to turn it over to the audience for some questions. But thank you guys in advance. Good dialogue, and I think there's some good takeaways from from the conversation. And so I'll turn it over, and let's check the Q&A here real quick.
Hey Todd, there's a question that came in that reads, this week, several tech firms met in Seoul. One action taken during this session was the signing of an AI safety pledge. Initial reaction, something that is performative or could actually have teeth. What do you think is a practical approach around this? Self-governance, third-party governance, hybrid? That's a great question.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I'll start by saying, so this is being driven really by this generative AI revolution. There are so many things coming around this generative AI revolution that a lot of people, for lack of a better way to put it, are finding fear in. And I think that is driving this type of agreement. And I very much do, I am very much in support of it. I do think that it would become way too easy for bad actors to very successfully complete actions that could be harmful to people without things like this in place. And it's also really important for companies that are in this for profit to make decisions that are some sort of moral standard and scrupulous when it comes to these AI things, because it would be very easy to make decisions to build AI that does do questionable things to make a profit. So I do believe that regulation is needed. I think it helps us all feel a little bit safer, and I think it will help lend to more productive use of AI. Is it going to prevent anything or everything negative from happening? No, of course not. But I'm very much in support of the idea, and I'm very much in support of regulation. And to the specific question, I do believe a hybrid approach is probably the best approach in my opinion. Kellen, you have anything on that?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think hybrid approach is necessary. I think regulation is coming. I think it's probably going to end up being pretty shocking how much regulation is needed on the generative side. I think there could be a lot of lawsuits because most generative tools were trained and created using internet data. So copyrighted data was used. So that's the other pitfall of generative, is it's not data that is within your walls. It's data. So when you're using a open source product that's trained off of the internet, you really don't have any control over that environment, what happens in the future. And that's part of the reason why I think there is a lot more risk on the generative side than predictive, because typically predictive is using your own data. I think there'll be a lot less restrictions in the future and regulation around your own data, the use of your own data. There's really no reason there would be, except for decision making. I think that ultimately AI that's used in a moral way should ultimately having a human make the decision, especially if it's something that could impact another human. So if it's just serving up better insights, more data, you can see how some of those things can aid in. So if you're predicting, for instance, conversion, or somebody's going to make a purchase, that's something you don't need a human to really interact with. But if you're predicting somebody's a criminal or that they're doing something illicit, you would want the AI to do a lot of the analysis, but you still need a person to make that ultimate decision. So I think there could be regulation, hybrid approach to that as well. But ultimately, I think generative is going to see the majority of the regulation.
Well, great. Thanks, guys. I
Leads,
think we've got
yeah,
more questions.
we do have a couple more questions. That leads kind of into another one, which is, are there concerns that you have with the different ways AI is being applied?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I do. I mean, and again, on the generative AI side of things, some of these videos that I'm seeing out there are downright scary. I mean, you can create a video that makes it look like someone who is the leader of a country is saying something that they have never said. That any prominent figure has said something that they've never said, and the video looks as real as it can possibly be. That is, if you don't know any better, that's scary to think that a large amount of people could buy into that. But what I see is, as kind of an eternal optimist, I see the majority of these applications benefiting humankind more than anything else. Just like any other type of revolution that's happened in our past, there's always going to be bad actors that are trying to take advantage of it to get their types of malicious intent succeeding. And sometimes it takes a little bit longer for us to close that gap, but I have full, I definitely have full confidence that we would be able to do that. So yeah, a few concerns right now, but it's all very brand new, and I think we'll be able to plug those gaps. I'm not one of these types of theorists that think that every single one of these revolutions comes through as the end of the world. I really think that this is mostly very exciting. But just to answer the question honestly, some of the stuff out there is a little bit concerning, but I have full faith that we'll be able to close those gaps. Kellen?
Yeah, again, Pat and I are on the same the bus. So yeah, I think there's things to be worried about for sure. But I think the good that can come out of these capabilities and being able to understand things better, predict outcomes better, which ultimately can lead to breakthroughs in medicine, breakthroughs in all sorts of development. So I think there's going to be more positive outcomes. I think regulation's needed, like we said, and I think a lot of that will be targeting at taking a lot of the risk off the table of bad actors using it in that malicious way. So yeah, I think there's optimism. There should be optimism around it. Ultimately, most humans are good, and we'll hopefully see that play out here.
Let's take one more question, and that is, for organizations that are just looking to start their AI journey, what or how would they measure success of an AI technology?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. So we run into this quite a bit with our prospects and our partners. And the first answer to that is it absolutely depends on the use case. But it's really about finding a way to quantify the mitigation of risk at the end of the day. And that's for example, my favorite use case, AML KYC. It's being able to quantify the mitigation of risk and being able to quantify the ability to reduce human hours, resource hours, for having to parse through all these kinds of pieces of information. And quantifying that is something that then can be translated to financial information. Again, it's different for every single use case, but part of what we do is help you understand how to do that. When you come to us and give us your business requirements, one of the things that we're all three of us here on this call are able to do is help you understand how you would quantify that return. And there's, like I said, no one size fits all, but it's really about being able to put metrics on a reduction in something, which can be risk, can be man hours, and an increase in something, which can be efficiency, compliance, and you know, anything that allows the business to have something to be able to stand on when it comes to presenting to any and all stakeholders how things have improved, both on financially, human resource wise, organizationally, all across the board.
And I don't have too much to add to that because it's pretty eloquently said. But the other thing I would say is steer away from going for a solution that fits everything. Because the chances are that some of these big enterprise solutions, they may have bought pieces and parts of companies to do things, but they're probably not going to work as good as a provider that's really focused on delivering an AI solution for a specific category. So I think it's all about the use case. It's all about speccing it out. But like Pat said, your provider should be able to help you with that. If they can't help you tell the story on why their solution is going to either give you a better ROI or a better efficiency, then you should just talk to somebody else. So, but yeah, definitely look for. There's going to be businesses that are very specialized in certain areas. Some of the ones that say we do everything, I would be a little leery of that.
Well, guys, this has been fantastic. You know, I want to thank, you know, Pat and Kellen for joining us. You know, I know you guys are busy building and innovating, and so we want to let you guys get back to that. But you know, I believe this was helpful, you know, for this audience and to the audience, right? Like we'll be around if you got additional questions, you know, and want some more insights from us. But yeah, thanks again, gentlemen. It was nice to have you guys on today.
Thanks, Todd.
Thanks very much to our audience and to our panelists today. We really appreciate your attendance, and we hope to see you at another webinar soon. Have a great day, everyone.